Hey everyone! Hey everyone! Oh wait, I'm listening to myself. That's not gonna work. How is everyone doing? Hey y'all! Oh, the first on stream. Hey Hamish! Thanks for joining, buddy. Congrats on all the amazing work, by the way, too. It's looking awesome. Still need to play the game, though. Alright. Let me know if the music is too loud, by the way. Thanks, me too. Yeah, it's pretty awesome to join the industry on that. Congrats on making it in, buddy. We should have like a celebration stream or something. All right. Yeah. Yeah, so for people that are new to this stream, right? You can always just ask me any questions that you're thinking of about the games industry or like game development, Unreal Engine, personal work. I'm an environment artist myself. I work at Ubisoft Berlin. So if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. We got some questions from our community too, so we're probably going to get started with those. Got some good ones. Let's turn down the music just a bit. Yeah, there we go. Push it up again. All right, I would say let's dive straight into it, right? So the first question is from Iona Oprisan, and she asks, I've got one. It's about your first job and probably relates to imposter syndrome. What happens when you don't know how to do something? It's pretty simple, but I know that for a lot of people, it can be like their initial hurdle of getting into the industry, right? And just ask questions. Like it took me a long while to realize that, and that it's totally okay to just ask questions. I think there's this weird thing of, well, it's called imposter syndrome, right? Like that you're afraid to ask questions because you think that everyone knows everything, but it's not true. Like it's also the quickest way to learn, by the way. If you just ask a question, there's probably like an easy solution to it, even if though it's like mind melting for your end. Naru Kennedy, thanks for joining the stream for the first time. Happy to have you. But yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck at that mentality where it's like, oh, dude, just being afraid of asking questions. It took me like a month or something as well, where I was kind of struggling through a lot of the stuff that I was doing, especially because my experiences with baking, for example, weren't really that good up until that moment. So, yeah, I think what was the first thing when I really... I'm thinking back. I think it was like I think we had to do like a statue or something. And it was the first like complicated prop that I was doing on Planet Coaster. And I just didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know how to tackle it, didn't know how to approach it. So that's where I, after like fumbling through for like an hour or two, I was like, okay, like let's just ask someone. And it was like a really simple thing, just like a really simple solution. What was it in the end? Like it was, I don't know what it was in the end, but it was something super simple. And it's just like the time that it cost me thinking about asking someone is just a complete waste of time. Just do it. All the artists around you have all been in the same position as you, so just ask questions. And then the second question that sort of leads into that same point is, how do you get over that fear that you'll be asked to do something and you don't know how? Or the fear that they all secretly laugh at you behind your back at how your backwards way of unwrapping and modeling is. Well, I think that's a legitimate fear, right? But it's always unfounded. Because if you have good people in the company, then they don't mind like teaching you stuff or like showing you how to do stuff. They'd be happy to help. How do you get over the fear that you'll be asked to do something and you don't know how? Well, I should really. I always saw it as a challenge. When someone asked me to do something, I was always like, okay, like I wouldn't say it out loud, right? I wouldn't say that I was afraid to tackle it, but I would just be a little bit open about it and say like, okay, it might be my first time of doing it. I'll be happy to do it, but I might need some more. What is like some more backup or like some more support when it comes to this specific thing. And that's totally fine. Don't be afraid to be honest about the things, but always see them as a challenge and just tackle them head on. Have you ever heard of a situation when someone was sacked right after being hired because it turned out that they lied or worse than their portfolio? Oh, thanks for the question, Naru Kennedy. We'll dive into those. I got a couple of more questions in this question list from the community, right? And then we'll go through the questions in the chat. So if anyone has a question, just feel free to drop it in the chat. It can be anything about the games industry, environment art. It can be personal about me too. Like I moved countries a couple of times. I've been in the industry for roughly 6 years now. Worked on Planet Coaster, Planet Zoo, Jurassic World Evolution, and now I'm working on Far Cry. So yeah, anything, just throw it at me. I'll be happy to answer. Anyway, let's get back to the question from Iona though. Have you ever heard of a situation when someone was sacked right after being hired because it turned out that they lied or were worse than their portfolio? No, I don't think I've ever heard that, because normally those people get filtered out by the interview process anyway. Like for example, if you're in a room with like two experienced environment artists and they're asking you questions and you can't answer them and it turns out that you're a complete fraud, like the interview process will continue on with that conversation, right? But then it will probably be stopped after that, where it turns out that you're like a complete fraud and you're completely lied about all the stuff on your portfolio. I've never had that. And I think it kind of depends on how you were to tackle it, right? But if you can't explain your thought process or the way that you're thinking about your work when you're doing it, especially in the interview process, you're going to fall through pretty quickly. It's pretty easy to see through all that stuff. Yeah, I've had some interesting conversations where people didn't openly admit that they were basing this from a tutorial though. But that's fine. I get that there's like a little bit of a stigma of like following a tutorial. But if you're somewhat in the know of what's happening in the 3D environment art, specifically that space, then yeah, you can ask questions about that and just be like, hey, was this based on a tutorial? And if it was, like, how did you improve upon it, or what was your take of the tutorial? Because a tutorial, like following a tutorial, is fine, 100%. Like that's how we all learn too. But it's how you make it your own. That's where the difference lies. Yeah, I think there have been some situations where somebody was I wouldn't say sacked because they didn't get through the process themselves, right? But I would imagine that some people try to lie their way into the industry, for sure. Yeah, these are some good questions, Iona. Thanks for asking them. I think a lot of people are struggling with this. Just I want to reiterate for the first question, right? Just being afraid to ask questions, or like the imposter syndrome that comes into it. Just ask questions. Like it's literally like the biggest thing that I've learned in my time in the industry. Like it's the biggest thing of like growth. Just ask questions. It's totally going to be fine. Hey, Seku, thanks for joining. All right, next question is from Leon K from our community. Did you ever do freelance work? I find it hard to imagine how exactly this would work as an environment artist, since you can probably only contribute in little pieces compared to other 3D disciplines like motion graphics and design, where you would model and animate an entire product, like a commercial, for example. I haven't done any freelance work. Like probably the closest that I got is making modular asset packages for the Unreal Engine store. That's probably the closest that I get. But I wouldn't really say that. Yeah, I wouldn't really classify that as freelance work. There was a moment where I was thinking about accepting freelance work, and I got some offers for people that wanted me to make like a full environment in 3ds Max with like textures and everything. So I think there are opportunities to make full environments, but I think we just have this narrow view of environment art through like a game perspective lens. But there's so much more to it, like, or even like a game engine lens, where sometimes a game isn't running in like your typical Unreal Engine or something like that, and they just want you to deliver a good looking environment that can be used as like a 2D backplate or something like that. I think that was the case actually when they were asking me to do that. It was supposed to be like a 3D map, like a world map that you could scroll over. I think there's definitely some options, right? Especially on the prop side of things, where just making props, like Decagon is like a good example for that, where you're just modeling props. Or even there are some outsourced studios. I think talking to William, who I do the podcast with, he worked on Overkill, The Walking Dead, and he was responsible for as outsource, which is like still like a different thing compared to freelance, because there's like a team behind it. But he had the opportunity to work on some environments, so that was pretty cool. I didn't really expect that to happen for some reason. So I think there's definitely opportunities out there, but yeah, I like the stability of just a regular 9-to-5 job, and then doing Beyond Extend and doing this on the side and just trying to help people as much as possible. I wouldn't say that I'm interested in just doing freelance the traditional way. Because yeah, I've heard there's just so much that comes with it, right? Just the organization, the contracts, the negotiations with other people, like figuring out like who's a good client and who's not. I think that might be the biggest thing that holds me back. It's just like not really being sure what your client is going to expect or ask from you. Or maybe that's just my inexperience in that field. Totally. Could be it too. Yeah, I leave the freelance work for more experienced people, or people who enjoy that stuff. It's a good question though. All right. Yeah, we got some new people in the chat, right? So if you got any questions about game environment art, game industry, like personal questions for me, maybe something about my portfolio, your portfolio, the way you're dealing with your personal work, just feel free to ask. I should really use the Twitch messages a bit more instead of just repeating this over and over. Next question, though. This is from our community as well. 3D Licks asks, I wonder if all the studios, like all the Ubisoft studios, share the same pipeline/workflow to create assets. So, example given, how modular sets are built or how materials in the engine are built. This is I don't know how far I can go into this, right? And I've already answered this in the community for that reason too. There's a lot of different pipelines and workflows because Ubisoft works with a lot of different engines in general, and there's like different pipelines that are attached to each engine. So yeah, I wonder. But like for the asset creation itself, there's always that fundamental thinking, especially when it comes to like modular sets, right? Most of the time they work in the same way or they get built the same way. Where there's like a lot of, because it's an open world game, right? You need to think about it in optimization perspective, where you're trying to make the most out of the materials that you can give. So like a lot of tileable textures, a lot of trim sheets that are being used, a lot of things that are happening in the shaders as well, with blending two tileable textures together and trying to optimize the use of materials instead of having like a bunch of textures that you need for a unique prop. It's super important for like an open world game to like try to optimize the amount of textures that are being loaded in at any point. Yeah, but I wouldn't. There's like lots of different pipelines and workflows. Because some, like one engine might be building upon like, I don't know, just as an example, this is just like an example that I'm thinking of is one might be vertex paint based, where there's more manual labor involved, right, from the artist side. But then on the other spectrum, like another engine might work in a way where everything is more based on the textures that are already present in the world. So like world space textures or whatever, where it blends with the biome system that we have. There's some interesting talks about this. Especially, they did a couple of good talks about Far Cry and how, especially in Far Cry 5, like how the engine works, like how the biome system works, how the procedural system works, how all the roads get generated along a procedural system, and it will spawn decals in certain places, and it will automatically spawn like rail guards and what is it, like signs, like road signs. So pretty interesting stuff if that interests you. I would highly recommend just looking up I don't know what the name of it is. Let me quickly look it up, right? It's a really good talk. Let's have a look. Can I quickly find it? There might be some good talks on GDC as well about this. Oh, I can't find it really quickly. Yeah, but I'm sure that people out there can find it if they really wanted to look at that. It goes into like all the procedural systems that are created, like how the natural elements, like the biomes, get generated, how the spawning of individual foliage works, and all that. So it's a really good insight in the way that that they worked on Far Cry 5. Do you guys have a constant interchange between the studios so you can learn from each other? Yeah, so this is probably the biggest thing that I love about Ubisoft, is just how open it is about sharing the knowledge, especially within the Ubisoft studios. We have our own internal platform, like our own internal video platform that a lot of people can use to just do talks, do explanation videos about new tech that's coming up. There's a lot of interesting stuff like that, and a lot of people traveling between the studios to do presentations about stuff that they worked on. It's amazing working in an ecosystem like that. I think it's a really good question. It's a bit of, I have to be careful with my words here, right? Because you don't know what might be under NDA and whatnot. So I want to be careful with my words that I don't reveal too much. Benjo93, thanks for the follow. All right, so these were all the questions that we had from the community. So it's time to dive into some questions from the chat. So I'm gonna add this here, but I'm gonna repeat it as well for the people that are listening. And that is like, if you're new to the stream, just feel free to drop any questions, right? Like about environment art, personal work, working in game development, portfolio questions, anything like that. Or just like a question for fun. And then we'll go through them. All right, let's have a look at the chat here. My only question would be what people usually expect from juniors during an internship period. Oh, okay. So this is highly dependent on the studio that you're going to apply for, right? Because there are some studios that won't give you that much responsibility just yet, and they want to give you the time to get accustomed over like a really long period to all the tools, all the workflows, like how to work in a good team, how to basically get used to the environment, or like being new to the industry, right? So it does depend on the studio. On our studio, we give like a lot of responsibility to the juniors. We've had a really good junior join, like, well, it's already over a year ago, called Stan van Gaal. And let me quickly look up his portfolio. Might as well add it in the links, right? If I'm giving him a shout out anyway. So this is the person that joined us, and he's been getting like a lot of responsibility, and it's amazing to see him grow through that, and really being open to like all the responsibility that he's getting. So I would say, especially in our studio, we're really open with that, and we don't really treat you any different than other people inside of the development team. Like, we're all just one and the same. It shouldn't really matter if you have good ideas about in this particular case, right, environment art. Like, if they're good ideas, like there's no reason to hold back just because you're a junior or like an intern. Like the ideas and the ideas are just as valid. But usually, let's say we generalize a bit, right? So if we're talking about a game like Far Cry 5, for example, where you have some bigger outposts or like some smaller outposts, you as a junior are not going to be responsible for the bigger outposts. You're going to be responsible for the smaller ones, where it's like small POIs where you can really train on like how to set dress in a specific way, where you have the opportunity to tell smaller stories to the people that are playing it. And it's also getting used to, first of all, working with a level designer in our case, and then also working with the AI from indie game, where you have to not only make the place look good, but also make it playable. Like the gameplay is going to come first anyway. And then your art is going to come on top of that. So it's really, I think that's probably the biggest change that you have to make coming from like a university or not working within a team, right? Is you've always been focused on purely your art up until this point. But now it's switching to like where it's an actual game environment and you need to be walking through that environment. It needs to be fun to play and it needs to work for like 360 surroundings, and it needs to be cover placement, and then how you as an artist work in that puzzle where you build upon the stuff that you get from a level designer. So that's also why you're focusing on like the smaller points of interest, right? Because there's not so much, like it's not an important mission. Like if something breaks in that location, for example, worst case scenario, right? Like it's going to be pretty damaging to like the player's experience, where if it's just like a small exploration mission and you get stuck on something, like people can just jump over it or just forget about it instead of being like a game breaking thing. So I think that would be the biggest thing, where you're not really expected to work by yourself 100%. You're still dependent on other people helping you out. I hope that answers the questions. Like if you got any more questions, feel free to drop them. Bum, bum, bum. My only question is how to deal with procrastination. Yeah, that is a question that plagues us all, I think. What really helped me, and I brought this up in like a previous stream as well, where I was working on my stuff, is figuring out a rhythm, like figuring out your daily habits. That's the biggest thing that changed it for me. And I don't know if you heard this before, but like working for like half an hour a day, just half an hour, just start there. And then what's going to happen is that after a while, it's going to grow longer than half an hour, because you're going to get into it, you're going to get used to it, and it will change to like an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, and that's completely fine. But what that is going to do is that it's going to change your wiring in your brain, where you know that you have to do some work before you can start to do something else. That is probably also like the point 2 of the equation, where it's not about giving up the stuff that you want to do, like play games, for example. It's getting the important stuff done first, and then using games or books or listening to music or whatever you want to do for relaxation purposes. You use that as a treat, or like as a reward for doing work. And there's obviously going to be times where you barely make it through half an hour, but that's fine. You still did half an hour, and you're still doing more than people who do nothing. Because even if you only do like half an hour a day, that's still gonna be like a massive amount of time at the end of the year, like if you keep it up every day, compared to doing nothing. But it's also important that the reason I think a lot of people lose the importance of that half an hour. Like, keep it at that half an hour, because there are going to be days where you don't want to be doing more. Like you had a tough day at work, some personal issues came in between. Just do that half an hour and then treat it as like, okay, I did my work and now I can relax. And that's the thing that really helped for me. Like, since picking that up in university, I really had I don't know, I don't think I've let's think. I'm thinking about a moment in time where I didn't work like at least half an hour a day, or like on personal projects, right? And I think the only time is on vacation, probably. But it's just because I enjoy it. Like I enjoy getting back into it. There's also, and this is like a separate point by itself. But what I also do, and what a lot of people probably find crazy, or I don't know, just like illogical, I guess, is that I on purpose don't play certain games. Like I'm really picky with what I choose to consume, if you want to say it like that. Where I'm always lagging behind with movies, with series, with games, and I'm really conscious about what I play and where I spend my time. So I think that's a big thing. It's a good question though. I think a lot of people struggle with that. Another question: how to face an interview for an art position? Oh man, I'm actually writing a complete breakdown for like the interview process for an art position. It's nearly done, but I just need to get it done, really. Because there's multiple steps to like an interview process, right, for an art position. So let's look at how it generally looks. First, you get the application process, where you prepare your portfolio, your CV, your cover letter, all that stuff that you need to do for the application. And then once that is accepted, then you get to the interview process, where most of the time there's going to be one online interview, and then there's going to be an in-house interview, and then you're most likely going to be accepted or denied. Like when you get to the step of your actual what is it, like your actual in-house interview, I would say it's like 95% already done. Because the reason why we do an online interview first is we want to look at your skills. We want to look at your environment art. We want to look at your technical understanding. And we really want to dig into that part of it. Then sometimes when we think there's some potential there, but we're not really sure, that's where an art test comes in, right? And then once you complete that art test and it checks like all the boxes that we wanted to test you on, that's when we go to like the second interview stage, where in this interview it's more about you as an artist and how you work in like a team, like how your mood is going to affect the team. Like, are you a positive person? Are you a negative person? Are you how do you deal with stress? That's why sometimes you get these awkward questions in between where I can't really think about any of them, but like they kind of swipe you off your feet, and that's probably done intentionally just to test how you react to like uncertain situations. But yeah, when it comes to like the actual, like if you're talking about the actual interview for an art position, just do preparation. Like look at the studio, look at what they worked on. If you know the names of the people, maybe look at their portfolio, see what they produced. And just do like a whole bunch of research for that position. Because if you're applying to an environment art position, it's just like a, what would you call it? It's like a catch-all for environment art, because environment art can also be foliage, it can also be props, it can also be set dressing, it can also be world composition, it can also be rocks, it can be all these things in one banner, right? So that would probably be, if you're looking for an application, that would probably be the first step, where you're just looking at what this specific thing is that they're asking for. And then yeah, then from that point on, it's just about going through the motions, really, just going through the application process. And let me catch my train of thought, right? So we talked about doing the research of the company itself. Also, this is also an important step. Look at Glassdoor. Look at what the average wage is for that position, because in most cases, at least in my case, I always had to move. We always wanted to have this little adventure, right? So we always had to move countries as well. So it's really important that you know how much you're going to get paid before you get stuck into like a position in the games industry. So look at Glassdoor. Take it with a pinch of salt. Sometimes it depends on the amount of reviews that you get, or like the amount of people that submit their actual income. Yeah, is there anything specific that you want to know about the interview? Is it more about how to prepare? Yeah, I know it's a long answer. That's why I wanted to ask a question. If is there anything specifically that you want to know? Like, is it about how you face the people on the other side, or is it more just purely about the preparation side of things, like how you prepare for the interview? Would be good to specify it a little bit more. Hey, da habe ich too. Thanks for joining again. It's glad to see you. Hey. Sibracht. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Sieber 8. Oh my god, I'm just gonna butcher names. Ugh, sorry about that. How big is an environment / prop team usually? Good question. It does depend on the project and the studio and all that stuff, right? There's like a lot of factors that come into it. Because like if we look at like a smaller studio, like an indie studio, maybe they might have 1 or 2 people on the environment / prop team. If we're looking at AAA productions, especially open world ones, it can be like a lot of people. Because there's not only the people that work inside of the studio, right? There's also people that do outsourcing. Like, should we include them into it? Because then the number can go up to like over 100, maybe, like even on some of the bigger productions. Like easily over 100, I would say. Just in-house. Okay. Let's have a think. So let's think about Planet Coaster. I think we had, what was it at one point? 10 environment prop artists for the stuff that we were doing at some point for the initial release for Planet Coaster. I think 10 to 15 at some point. But we're definitely way more in our current production. Especially if you look at the entire team. Yeah, no worries. It's a good question. I'm sorry that I have to like skirt around the edges and give you like a half-baked sort of answer for this. It's kind of tricky. And it's also, I mean, NDA is a part of it too, right? So I'm not sure if I can disclose the amount of people working on it. So just want to be safe. RDN_A. RDNV_A, sorry. What is the must-have skill or mindset for an environment artist in your opinion? A must-have skill is just artistic understanding. I know that this sounds like a really wonky skill, but there are some people that can technically execute pieces, but they don't have the underlying artistic insight. What I mean by that is composition, color usage, how to actually build up a scene in like a logical way. It's those kind of, I would call them fundamental like skills, like color theory, like composition is definitely going to be a big one for environment artists. Yeah, and there's so much that can be learned from just composition, right? Like how to use a camera, how to compose a picture so that it pulls the focus to like certain regions of your space instead of other regions. There's I think that would be the must-have for sure. Because the thing is, as you get out of school or you go through the motions, right, of getting your environment art portfolio up to scratch, I would say that the technical skills are way easier to teach someone, and they're also always evolving because the industry keeps evolving over time. That those skills are easier to translate if you have the core foundations already done. It's way hard to teach someone how to compose an image, how to get like a good composition, good lighting, good color usage, like how to impact the mood instead of just making a pretty picture. You really want to think about like what certain colors do impact like a certain scene, for example. Like we see this all the time in games where you have this nice contrast between like, I don't know, red torches in like a blue icy environment, for example. What is a good thing for mood? I'm thinking right now. I mean, there's so many examples, right? Like why do we use like more muted colors in rain? That's purely because we want to impact the mood of a certain piece. So I would say that those are like the must-have skills. Obviously, without the technical skills, you're not going to get in. But if you got the technical skills, like up to 90%, but you really have like solid foundational skills, then you're going to stand out from the rest. There's just, yeah, you can't really... You need something to build upon, and those are the foundations. It's a really good question, though. Really good. And as for... Because we talked about skills, right? And now for the mindset, is just definitely be able to adapt. Try to be positive and be good with stress, or just doing multiple things at the same time and organizing them in your mind. I think those would definitely be like the top things that just come to mind instantly. I mean, this is more like team fit purposes, right? But I just love working with people that are like super passionate about their stuff and like always positive and like always trying to find like the new thing, or like always try to like, even if it doesn't work out in the end, like even try to just experiment with new stuff and be like, oh, maybe this didn't work out, but there's something here that we can use for this example here. It's just super nice to work with people that are like really passionate about that. Let me drop this reminder for people in the chat, for all those who joined new. Like, feel free to drop any questions about environment art, anything like that, as we go through these questions in the chat. Yeah, thanks for that question, RDNV_A. That's a really good one. Let's see. Just in-house. We answered that. Oh, okay. Following that question, which are the essential environment art fundamentals and how to work on them efficiently? I would say composition is probably the biggest one for environment art. because that is the one that most directly impacts our work. And how to work on them efficiently. If you really want to optimize working on composition, just forget about the appropriation side of things. Just do these not for portfolio reasons, but do them because you want to train on it, right? Go onto the Unreal Engine marketplace. Like every month there's like free packages. Download as many packages as you can, or some that interest you, and then build them up in a way where you're just purely focusing on like the composition and how to work with like leading the eye, and just training on that fact where you have like a nice foreground, background, and middle ground composition where you kind of purposefully put things in the frame, like in the foreground, to block the eye from leading outside of the frame. There's like a lot of good examples of let's actually have a look. Otto. Let's see if I can quickly find it, right? Otto Ostera, is that the one? Yeah. That's it. So I'm gonna actually, let's try something new. I'm gonna switch it up just for a little bit. What is it? Let's try this. Okay, sweet. So we're here, right? Everyone can see this. So this is like a really good example of, especially composition wise, where this foreground element is made dark on purpose, because there is some stuff to see here, right? But it's not important for what he wants to tell here. Like the focus should be on this building. And that's also where you can see like the 2/3 rule come in, where it's like if you divide your frame into 3 equal divisions along the height and the width of it, like this is going to be like the focus point. I hope you enjoy my shitty mouse drawings, by the way. But you can clearly see the layering in this one, where you have like the foreground, which is really dark, and then there's some super interesting stuff going on in the background too, where you have like this castle in the mountain, and then you have the light coming through here, but it's like shining this direction. It's all done on purpose to like reinforce the composition here. Yeah, exactly. These bridges are pointing towards this. Like this line here, it's pointing towards this. Like there's like even this foreground element, it's all subconscious, right? Like for the people viewing it, but like everything, there's like so many things that like reinforce, like, look, this is the focus point. It's awesome. It's a really nice piece. All right, let's switch back. Where is it? Oh no, did I lose a chat? No. Well, I still have it here, so we're still going to go through the questions. Kind of sucks that we lost the chat though. Okay, so we answered that question. And how to work on them efficiently. Yeah, I think just blocking out stuff, or it doesn't even need to be like stuff from the Unreal Engine marketplace, right? It could also be just, it could be gray boxes even. Just really purely focusing on the block out. Let's have a look. Sebracht, he asked, like, do you have many communication with designers at work who try to transition to 3D? What do you mean, like motion designers, like from outside of the field, or designers, like level designers from inside of the games industry? Because we do have some people that Oh, communication designers 2D. Oh, okay, yeah. I read that as like separate things. We do have some people, yeah. I do have a background in that myself, right? So I came from advertisement. I did that for a while. Not ever in like a professional setting, but I was training up to be that. So yeah, we do have some people like that at work, I think. It's really interesting to see how their backgrounds filter into 3D, because they are more aware of that stuff, like how to use colors, like how to use the composition, like how they're really conscious about the framing of everything, because it's more marketing heavy, right? So, but as for 3D people, let's think. I might be the closest one. Oh no, we have one person that recently, or like fairly recently, transitioned between the two. Yeah, there's that's like a really good transition, to be honest. Just really focusing on like the composition and like selling that piece. Oh yeah, these are some more examples, like the unsaturated green for a sickly look, for sure. I guess cinema is a good field to study. Yeah, 100%. Cinema and photography. That's one of my hobbies as well. Like, I like to do photography. I usually only do it when I'm on holiday though. But it's so good to train your eye. It's such a nice way to like really look at the world and see it through, pardon the pun, like through a different lens. Thank you for the answers. That helps a lot. No, my pleasure. Really. It's fun to just talk about this and try to help people out. Yeah, the bridge things. Yeah, that was for the breakdown that we just did. Listens in while playing Godfall. Hey, Raj. Hope you're having fun, man. Looks like a really cool game. Are there more people self-taught or game dev schools? Let's think. I would say in our studio, it's definitely more game dev schools, or at least people that have went through the schools for like a couple of years. But I can see that shifting though. There's like a lot of people that are becoming really good from like just being self-taught. It's just, yeah, I think there's like, what am I thinking of? What comes to mind first is just that it's so much harder for self-taught people because you need to have that discipline, right? It's super tricky to build up a discipline when you don't even know where to start or you don't know what to focus on yet. I'm not saying that it's impossible, and I've seen crazy people do crazy shit just by doing like a self-taught environment art course or whatever, teaching them all the stuff themselves, which is awesome. But definitely at the moment, more game dev schools. I'm from DIA as well, Digital Arts and Entertainment in Belgium. That's where I studied. And I'm from Belgium myself. So yeah, I think more people come from game dev schools. But I can say from the standpoint of someone who is at a design school, it's still kind of self-taught at the end. It does depend on the schools, right? Because I mean, I've been in contact with some schools, and I still go to my old school to sometimes help out with like internship days and all that. But I've also come in contact with people from our community, for example, that went through school and technically finished the curriculum, but man, I wouldn't call that like anything. Like they didn't really teach them anything by the sounds of it. Like it's fucking crazy sometimes when there's schools like that. that don't really teach someone anything at the end. I think if we're going to generalize, right? I think the schools in Europe usually do a better job at teaching people and like properly preparing them for the games industry. And also, in most cases, they are way cheaper than comparative to America, for example, right? But yeah, like even at our school, like a school, it's like a 3-year curriculum, but I did it in 4 years because that was an option. You can sort of lighten your workload and spread all the classes out over 4 years instead of 3. It made it more manageable for me. And because in the beginning, I have to be honest, like I didn't know any discipline. Like it was the first time where I really felt like I wanted to go for something, and I really found something that I wanted to strive towards. So yeah, that was really interesting. Yeah, exactly. Most studies are self-studies anyway. Yeah, even like I praise my school for like what they do, right? But even there, like if you figure out in the second year that you want to become an environment artist, for example, there is still a lot that you need to do on the side where, like if you want to develop skills in like purely environment art, you need to do work on the side. Like there's no other option. Because in our school we got taught about, especially in the first year, orientation year, let's look at the entire curriculum. What did I learn? I learned animation, programming in C, C++, MaxScript. I learned Python. I learned environment art. I learned level design. I learned character art. I learned character drawing. Like there's just so much that there was in the curriculum itself. And then you also have like all the game jams that you're doing, and like building like spending time actually building games or environments. Like there was just so much time that went into all that stuff. What I try to do is just I try to force the what do they call it? Like the assignments into environment art at some point. I was always like, okay, maybe I can turn this into an environment somehow. That's what I try to do the most possible. Yeah, most studies are self-studies anyway. It was the same in my time at uni. Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? Because it doesn't... It shouldn't really be like that, but then it's also super tricky. I think it's super tricky to find like a good balance for everyone as like a school, if we're gonna play devil's advocate. Zeku 3D, is age an issue when looking for your first art job? Nope. Not an issue at all. I'm generalizing a bit, but if your work is good enough, then it's like your age doesn't matter. Like if you can make killer art and you can work within a team, then there's no reason that you shouldn't get like an art job. Simplifying it a bit, of course, but like age shouldn't be an issue. It's a good question though, because I think a lot of people are scared of that, especially. Well, I've seen some people like in their 30s or 40s like switch careers, like from something else to games. And I think, in my opinion, I respect them even more for that, because they spend all these years like working for something, and they were quite unsure like when to switch, how to switch, and then they finally made that decision, and they finally stood up for something that they really wanted to do. So like my respect goes out to those people that at that age like just want to switch. And yeah, it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see them grow into that. Literally every project I did at uni had 3D elements. Oh wait, you're 26 and you're afraid of being too old. What? 26 is not old at all. What are you talking about? Don't be scared about what younger people are doing. There's always going to be someone younger and there's always going to be someone older. Like even if you're 18, like even if you're 18, right? There's still going to be that 16-year-old kid who has been modding since they were 12 or whatever. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's just a number. Like it, yeah. I get where you're coming from though. And I get that a lot of people have that same fear, right? But 26 is not old at all. Like I'm still constantly thinking about the shit that I'm doing and constantly saying, and like I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. I mean, I'm not that big of a difference. Like I'm 28, 27, 28. I don't know. Just looking at my girlfriend like confused because I always forget how old I am. Yeah, exactly. That's far from old. You're never old enough to do anything. Exactly. One more question. What's the biggest... Oh, feel free to just drop questions as you want. I'll be happy to help. What's the biggest technical difference between building a playable environment and compositing a still environment concept art? And what's the first thing you would do when transitioning... Wait, what's the... Let's break down that first question first, right? So what's the biggest technical difference between building a playable environment and compositing a still environment? A playable environment, you have to take into account like the navigation of, first of all, the player. So it has to be like an actual walkable environment. So that means that you can't have like medium rocks scattered all over the place because it's just going to be annoying for the player to walk through, right? And especially if we're looking at, it depends on what kind of game that you're looking at, right? For like a linear game like God of War, for example, you always have like a nice and clear path where you have to go. There's like some exploration bits, but it's you can do way more. You have way more control over what the player is gonna see or how the scene is gonna be composed. Let me just do that. Bye. Where was I? Sorry about that. So it's in linear games, right? Like God of War, you have more control over the composition of the scene, where because you're walking on a path, you can really nicely highlight things in the distance or things that are happening that are important to the player. Whereas if you're working in an open world game, that's probably... It's the most difficult situation that you can be in if you want to construct like a really nice composed image, because you can approach it from like any angle at any point in any time of day. So you have to take all those factors into account too. So that's where, like, say the difference between a linear game in this example, right? God of War has like a nice curved tree pointing towards like this kind of thing. Like you're always going to see that because everyone is, or like 90% of the people are going to see that because they're all walking the same path. Whereas in an open world game, if you put that tree there, like 10% of the people are going to see it because like 90% of the people are going to come from different directions anyway. What's the big... Yeah. The biggest technical difference. Oh, like a still environment concept art. I mean, that's just a whole different thing. Are we talking about the actual thought process of how you would compose it? Because then there's like a lot of similarities between the two, because you're still thinking about like, oh, let me make this shape a little bit bigger because I want this to stand out more compared to this and have like the light hit it from this angle so that it nicely stands out. You're still doing that same thought process in 3D. And what's the first thing you would do while transitioning a 2D art into 3D? First thing is always block out. Just focus on the big shapes. Get all the big shapes from that 2D art into 3D, so that you have the composition, you have all the big shapes in there, and then you can start refining it. Don't worry about textures, modeling or all that stuff yet. It's just really quick. Just build your stuff out of cubes, and then start building it up. Yeah, that's far from old. Exactly. I didn't want to be too harsh on you there, Zeku, but I get where you're coming from. It is scary though, right? Because the competition is getting fiercer and fiercer every year. But here's the thing, right? Okay, that's good. I think what I wanted to say about this is that people always get intimidated about other people doing stuff, but you don't know what the people are doing outside of their art. So say you have this amazing artist who does like killer pieces, but maybe they don't want to be in the games industry. Maybe they're doing freelance work and that's what they want to do. So you shouldn't really see it as a competition. And even like killer artists, maybe they're not too good, or maybe, I mean, if we want to take it really bluntly, maybe they're just an asshole, right? It could be it too. So that you're really excited for them to get onto the project, and then you do that first interview and it's like, oh no, we can't have this person in our team. I would rather have someone who is quote unquote worse, right? Than that really good person if they're like a really good team fit. Because that's especially in like a working environment. Like someone that's really good, okay, it can be inspiring for the team. I'm not saying that. But if they're constantly, I don't know, being an ass about it too, that's not going to help anyone in the team. And they're not going to be working with him for, well, with that person for far too long. It is a very competitive environment for sure. But yeah, this is the thing, what I mean with just, there's a lot of factors that come in it. Like that's one of it, right? But then you don't really know what those people are doing. It might be that the people that are really good, they just spend like 12 hours a day working on it, grinding day in, day out, and they're not happy about it. That could be a possibility too, right? So it's all about finding your way, and you shouldn't really care about what other people think about it. Just focus on, it's a very egotistical thing to say, but just focus on yourself and how you can improve and what makes you feel good instead of what everyone else around you is doing. Okay. Just had to type someone a message. Yeah. So we probably have some new people here, right? If you want to ask any question about the games industry, just feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm an environment artist for Ubisoft Berlin myself. I have 5 to 6 years of experience now working on some pretty awesome games. So if you got any questions, I'll be happy to help. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, like coming back to the competitive environment stuff, right? Especially looking at some of the intern days that I did recently for my former school. It's really amazing to see like the skill level of like the best people coming out of that school. It's pretty amazing what they're doing. and like how they're staying up to date, and also they're getting Houdini usage, like they're learning Houdini, and they're still getting like C++ or programming languages in there too. It's pretty intense these days, especially because it's also like social media and ArtStation only promoting the best work, right? I mean, it makes sense because then it promotes their then it also promotes their what is it, like their platform. Oh, the anonymous questions, that's actually a good point. Let me quickly check. I checked before the stream, but let me just check again, right? I know that we handled my grammar sucks. It's all good. Oh, okay. Awesome. So we have an anonymous question, right? So let me answer that in just a bit. So, do you know if Ubisoft Barcelona has environment art positions? No, I don't. Like, it's always best to look at the job listing itself, right? I don't know about any open positions. It's pretty hard to keep track of all the open positions that we have at our studio. Let alone other Ubisoft studios. Okay, so anonymous question. Crease or support edges? What do you like better? Phew. Man, it's been a long time since I did anything that needed any of these. It's been a long time since I did like high poly to low poly workflow, to be honest. I'm just all about the mid poly now. Just like titleable, stream sheets, try to optimize it as much as possible. But if I think back at the high poly workflow that I did, it's always support edges. How would I actually do it now? Bevel modifier in Blender is pretty good. You would still need some support edges because I don't think it like quad bevels, not like or like a quad chamfer in Max. It doesn't have that support, so it still triangulates everything. I don't know. Interesting question. If I do like a hero prop for any of my scenes, I'll let you know. Yeah, thanks for pointing out the anonymous questions. Like, I need to automate that a little bit better. Also, thanks everyone for being here. I appreciate you all being here, asking questions. This is awesome. It's already like an hour and 20 minutes. Jesus. All right. Da habe ich too. Speaking English is obviously mandatory for working in the industry. However, I was wondering how fluent you have to be in order to work at an international studio. It depends, right? Because there are some people who... I would say the most important thing, if we wanted to generalize, the most important thing is that if you can make yourself understandable, that's all we need to have. Because there are some people who aren't native English speakers and they still have a pretty thick accent. I wanna think back to myself, like even though like my first move was from Belgium to the UK, there was still like a bit of a language barrier in the beginning for sure. But as long as you can make yourself understood, you should be good. Yeah, there are still some studios where, especially when I look at Ubisoft France, I think there are still studios that are only French, for example. So it's pretty interesting that there are still some some studios like that. But yeah, I would say in general that is like should you hear me talk in English? Hey, I sucked in the beginning too. Trust me. I man, I still remember the first time when we went to the pub in the UK in Cambridge, and it was like my first week working in like a totally new country, totally new. Well, my first time actually being in an industry. Like I just graduated, like not even graduated. It was my internship, and I kid you not, like the first time I was just at a pub. I was listening to all my colleagues that I was trying to get to know. I heard them speaking to each other, and I was just lost. I was just sitting there, and by the time I thought about a reply for one sentence, they would already be like 3 sentences ahead. So I would always be like, oh, like kind of trying to say something, but it was just, yeah, all the different dialects and all that. I got used to it pretty quickly, but still, it can take a while though. I highly doubt they would, but do employers care if people learn via their own research or if they went to school? And if they don't, why do so many people put self-thought in their bios? Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people put self-thought in their bios because they're proud of it. There's like a stamp. I wouldn't really call it elitism, right? Because it is really tough to figure out your way through without any help. But these days, with all the communities that are available, it's never 100% self-thought, right? It's just having the right people surrounding you. And that's also what school really is at the end of the day. It's just having more experienced people around you that can teach you tricks that you need to learn yourself. But yeah, do employers care? No. What happens most of the time is that, especially for artists, right? Usually what happens is that you have a couple of people who are still really plugged into ArtStation, or like in my case, have like communities. And then they see people going through these communities, and then it's like, there comes a time where it's like, look, I think this person is really good. I think there's some real potential here. I think we should hire them. It's not always the case, right? But like the most organic way of working, that's probably the most organic way that it goes. So then there's not even a mention of going to school. It's just all about the art that you put into it. Yeah. Just reading the question again. I'm thinking about a scenario where it might be that you need to have gone to a school. And I think it only applies for internships. Where if you want to be part of like a specific internship for a studio, it has to be part of your curriculum. Like your school curriculum. I think that's the only thing that I can think of. But if it's just for like a junior position, then the only thing that is, well, at first it's going to capture the attention is just the art, if we're talking about environment artists. And yeah, the rest doesn't really matter that much. Like if you did it by yourself or you did it at school, like if you get to the same end result, then it doesn't matter, right? This is just me personally, but I feel like everyone should scrap whether or not you were formally educated. Neither is more impressive or important. I don't know. To me, it doesn't matter what people say on their portfolio, to be honest. It's this weird thing where who cares what people say about themselves, right? Like if they want to treat it as more important, they're going to find out in the end that it didn't really matter anyway. I think everyone just needs to learn that at their own pace. Like except aspiring. I don't know, even that. Like, I don't care. Like, if you're an aspiring environment artist, sure. Like, if you want to call yourself that, that's 100% fine. I don't care. Because it's this thing where you create art, right? If you want to call yourself something different, but in my eyes, like, if you create good art, like, it doesn't really matter. It's what you call yourself. Like, it's not gonna affect my opinion of you, if that makes sense. Like, if you call yourself an aspiring environment artist and you make killer work, I'm like, that has no impact on me whatsoever. It's just like, you create killer work. That's it. And I think that's how a lot of people, especially from inside of the industry, look at it. Yeah, no worries. Because there is this thing where, yeah, I wonder, because there is this whole seniority thing that's going on in the, well, that has been a part of the industry for a long time, right? So I wonder, it's their way of saying, like, look, I'm not there yet, in my opinion, and then, like, self-imposing some imposter syndrome upon themselves, so that if other people see it, they can lower their expectations and then be pleasantly surprised by their work. I don't know. It's interesting to think about, though. All right. Does anyone have any more questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going for an hour and a half already, so I think I might be getting to the last ones anyway, if anyone has them. This has been really awesome, though. I love doing these AMAs. I'm always pleasantly surprised by how many people turn up and, like, ask questions that I don't really think about. It's inspiring. All right. Let me just quickly look through. Is this going to be up on YouTube or reposted anywhere else? Yeah, so this is the thing that I'm trying to figure out, right? That's why you also see, like, the pretzel rocks in the chat. I had some issues before where some of the audio cut out, but what I want to do is upload these on YouTube, and they will already be up on Twitch anyway at the end of this session, so you can just look at them there. But I also want to have them available on YouTube, but for that I needed to figure out the music part of it first. So yeah, should be available. I think the last two sessions, like the first session was fine because that didn't have music, but the other two sessions, they got like dead sections of audio, which is pretty unfortunate. But yeah, if this is all for this session, I just want to thank everyone for joining again. This was freaking awesome. Oh, you missed your question. Oh shit, yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be up like as soon as it's done uploading. I don't know how long that takes, but yeah. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining for this session. I'll be here like every week at the same time to answer your questions. So if you think about something during the week and you really want to ask it, then just feel free to drop by and ask questions. Thanks everyone for joining. This was awesome. No worries. Thank you everyone. Have a nice Sunday.